This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
I want to tell you about our newest sponsor, Team Top Cat Sales. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or corporation? Look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan QB John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the highest quality and best service. Get your organization, school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going to topcatteamsales.com. That's topcatteamsales.com. Also, follow Top Cat on Twitter at Team Top Cat.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
What's up, Detroit? What's happening? You're listening to another episode on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, the DocNJock Sports Program. We are at episode 145. I am the Doc, John Macaroon.
And I am a certified G and a bona fide stud, and you can't teach that.
Bada boom. Sitting with me, my cousin, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. What's up, cuz? What's happening, brother?
How you doing?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah?
You know, it's always nice when you want a guest and you just go out there and make it happen. So the Tigers, the weekend was all bad. I'm tweeting out, I can't believe I'm watching this destruction of a team that I love to watch. I've been getting into the Tigers the last 3 years because of the fact that they've upped their payroll. They're a team that's, you know, in the top 5 in terms of Major League Baseball payroll. I'm watching them disintegrate right before my eyes. They're playing Baltimore, have leads, blowing leads, trying to work out at the gym, and they're up a significant amount of runs, giving up 5-6 runs from their bullpen. I'm like, could this get any worse? All of a sudden, one day, I'm just sitting watching, and there's someone new on Fox Sports Detroit. Kristen Keith shows up there, and she's like, hey, welcome. I'm new from Dallas, and I'm here to be the new Fox Sports Detroit reporter. I'm like,
you're like, attractive, blonde, woman? Yes, I'm all in. How do I get a hold of her?
Exactly. So I reached out, and then I said, I reached out to Fox Sports Detroit, and they made it happen. Kristen Keith on this very podcast will introduce herself to Detroit, and we'll figure out why the hell she went from Dallas to Detroit. And she seems like a very interesting reporter, and
because
she's got a lot of talent.
Much better sports town, bro. Come on.
Exactly.
Get your figures right. Let's go.
Yeah,
you know the deal.
You know, when new people come to town, they stop here at the Doc and Jock podcast, get to know the audience, and I'm sure she'll definitely enjoy talking to Doc and Jock, baby. So my mood's been perking up the last couple weeks with the Tigers. I'm still angry as all hell with them, you know, coming off of an 11 loss out of 13 stretch. But hey, you're playing a garbage Twin team, and you're mashing them. So far on this Wednesday recording this, I'm okay. But we got to talk about what the hell's been going on with Brad Ausmus. What the hell is going on with his job situation? And is this stretch at home going to potentially save his job?
Yeah, honestly, I think he gets through all of May, and I think he's safe. Because if you look at what they're going to be going up against here the next couple weeks, it's like the garbage teams in all of Major League Baseball. And Alavia, there was a soundbite of him coming out and saying, oh, well, we've had a really tough schedule. We've had a real tough stretch, and we've had one of the toughest stretches in all of the major leagues. Well, yeah, bro, you're supposed to beat the good teams. I mean, this is a team that's supposed to be in playoff contention, supposed to be contending for a World Series. You guys can't beat anybody. So, yeah, nobody cares if you're sitting there losing to the good teams. We want to see you beat them because you're expected and it was anticipated that you would be in contention with these teams, not getting drubbed up and down the field. Hey, thank God Minnesota came in here, and Brad Ausmus, I think, is probably the most happiest because all of a sudden these bats have come alive. Mike Pelfrey can win a baseball game finally, get off the schneid. They all of a sudden look really good, but you got to remember, they're going up against a 4A team. You know, this is a team that's just learning how to swing a baseball bat in some respects because they are atrocious.
The Twins are sitting at 10-28. When there was news that a Major League Baseball manager got fired, I perked up for a second. I said, did they do it? Oh, it was Atlanta. They were garbage. Freddie Gonzalez got the heave-ho. And when you peek at what happened to Atlanta, oh my gosh, they're rolling out there a minor league team. It's disappointing out there that he was the first guy to go, but he's probably relieved that situation in Atlanta is not good. They're rolling out their guys that are super young, and they're, they tapped into their AAA team to bring up their next manager. But with the Tigers, Brad Ausmus, I understood is, feeling the heat. Day in, day out, you roll into the office. You got 3-4 reporters that are just willing to ask you, hey, how do you feel about the fact that everybody wants you out? And, by Monday after that 4-game stint versus Baltimore, he was just pissed off, and he was just like, enough of this. Let's stop talking about my job. I get it. I'm on the hot seat. I've said it. Let's just talk about my team here. Then he goes out Monday night and just, after blowing an 8-run lead, you get 8 runs in the bottom of the first. You give up, give up 7 at that point, and boom,
the tirade from hell.
The badass tirade that everyone's talking about because of the fact that you typically see it, and the fact that a microphone from Fox Sports Detroit, Minnesota caught it, and everybody was, talking about it that day for sure. What was your reaction when you seen it? I was like, it was good, but it's too little, too late.
I loved it. I thought it was great. Like you said, maybe a little too late. We'll find out here going forward, but it was awesome. Like, the microphone picked up almost everything. And there was a point there. Yes, he doesn't give a shit. And there were a whole lot of F-bombs dropped too. It was great, man. Like, he's spitting stuff all over the referee, and he just loses it. You just see him come uncorked. It was great. You know why I loved it? Because at certain moments during my athletic career, we'll put it, honestly, it's just recreational hockey, I have come uncorked quite often. Yes, that has happened. I have picked things up. I have slammed things. I have punched glass. I have thrown things at referees. I have there was a time there where I choked out a teammate. Like, I literally was on top of him and I was choking him. His face turned purple. And at that moment, I snapped back to reality and I let go because his eyeballs were starting to bulge out of his head. I almost killed my own friend.
You like passion. You like to see Brad Ausmus.
He came uncorked. He was undone. If he could have took his jock strap off and threw it at the umpire, he would have. It was great. I loved it. I need to see that more often. If I could get that like twice a week, it'd be great.
And
I would love it.
The whole pullover thing was classic too, taking it off and throwing it on home base.
He was like, you can't see it anyway, so don't worry about it. Oh, it was great. And the umpire just stood there like, I can't respond to this. I don't even know what to do right now. Yes, my junk just crawled inside me and it's hibernating for the winter. Oh, it's summertime? Don't worry, it's still hibernating.
Why are the cynics out there saying that it was fake? He looked like he was genuinely pissed. He looked like he was really sticking up for the guys and potentially saving Nick C from getting ejected. Potentially Nick C could have turned around after that horrible call from the umpire and maybe said something, and he's not there later in the game to hit the game-winning home run.
Well, absolutely. That's what it was. He was going out there to try to save Nick. Nick was sitting there. He was lingering a little bit too long. You have to remember, the pitch before that, he sat there and had a discussion with the umpire, like, what are you doing? Then that pitch goes through, and Nick's like, are you serious right now, bro? And he ended up hanging out just a little bit too long. At that point, Brad Ausmus shows that he's engaged in the game, because these are questions that we've had about Brad Ausmus. Is he engaged? Does he know what's going on? Can he follow along with the baseball game and make the correct decisions? Well, at that point, he's engaged. He's following along. He knows what's going on. If he doesn't get out there, Nick's going to get tossed, and Nick's your best batter on this team right now. So he runs out there, basically taps Nick on the back like, I got this, go sit down. And he basically takes the bullet for Nick. And he just loses it. And I really believe it was all a culmination of everything that he's been going through this season. It was a lot of frustration with this team because he doesn't know what buttons to push anymore. He's tried everything. And the guys just weren't responding for whatever reason, whether it was the bullpen letting him down, the starting pitching letting him down, the bats in the lineup letting him down. You got a $1 billion man in Jay Up who can't seem to hit the broadside of a barn, and he let him down. So it was just, I think, a culmination of the frustration of this team, the culmination of the reporters asking, because you have to remember earlier that day, Jennifer Hammond, and props to her for going in there and asking the question. It was a legit question, and she had the right to ask it. Basically saying, hey, how do you feel that you might be fired? And he, has to field these questions day in, day out. How would you feel if you showed up to work every day and you had people sitting there asking you, like, hey, you're probably going to get fired today. How do you feel about that? Well, how the hell do you think I feel about that? Do you think I like that my ass is on the line? No, I do not like this. I don't want to deal with this. But he has to go in there, and every day he has to field these questions, answer these questions. And I think finally it just happened. Like the well runneth over, and he just was a geyser, just exploding all over the place. And I thought it was great, man.
See,
I loved it.
As you were talking, I was kind of thinking, when you come out for the better part of the last 2 seasons, and you've been calm, cool, professional, you're a guy that's looked at as a guy that kind of can maintain his demeanor in tough situations. I'm kind of starting to think, well, yes, it was good to see some emotion, some passion that he cared, but also maybe that also may be a sign that he's cracking, that the pressure of the media is getting to him. Listen, I know I'm going back and forth a little bit, but I like to see his emotion, but also knowing that the last 2 years you've stood on this hill and said, listen, I go about my daily routine day in, day out. I understand there's noise around me and things like that, but when the noise gets the hottest is when you come unglued. I would have been actually a little bit more respectful of Brad had he kind of gone through this last week and just been like, he did come out and say, hey, I do believe my job is on fire. I understand that. But he did start to come out and say, like, I kind of expected that I would be fired from my job first. I know the business I'm in and things like that. But as the pressure, ratcheted up, he kind of came unglued. So what kind of manager are you going to be in the ultimate situations, maybe in Game 7 of a World Series, where the pressure is ultimately the biggest you're ever going to face as a manager? The pressure from the media is intense, yes. The pressure from the fans is intense, yes. You got guys like you and I, podcasters, radio show hosts, talking all about you. But if you're going to die on the hill of being, hey, I'm ultra professional, and now the heat's turned up to maybe close to a boil, I would have maybe thought he should have maintained some professionalism and ride through it, because you knew that you're going to play garbage teams. You knew that potentially you had the Twins coming in and teams that are under 500. He maybe could have maintained his professionalism. I kind of maybe now thinking about it as I'm talking through it, maybe not as respectful of Brad for what he did.
I think it was the right moment, the right time. I think it was great. I think it was needed. If you looked at the way this team was sputtering along, this was the one button he hasn't pushed yet. He hasn't called this team out. He hasn't sat there and had some visceral display of emotion, some type of a reaction where this team, almost like slapping you in the face saying, hey, get your ass out of bed, get going, get a move on. This was that moment. This was maybe that flashpoint moment that this team needed to kind of wake up. And you know what? The way the schedule sets up perfectly, you can point back to this moment saying, hey, this was it. This is what got this team going. Because after that, I mean, they sat there and they rattled off a couple of wins here, and the bats have come alive, and they've looked good doing it. The pieces are kind of starting to come together. Granted, they're playing against less than par competition here. I mean, this is really subpar competition that they're going up against. The next stretch here, basically, I think into June 2nd, they're playing awful baseball teams. And this is probably what will help save Brad Ausmus' job right now.
No, I agree with you. I agree that it was a perfect storm Monday night. The fact that you had a big lead and you saw the other team come back and chip away, 8 runs you would think would be enough, but Minnesota came back against your ace. So it was a definition of a perfect storm. He's pissed, there's pressure, and the umpire is making calls that legitimately were bogus. That umpire deserved to get chewed out. And so with that combination, I do believe part of it was staged, but I do believe he was pissed. I mean, when you look at it, your team's up 8-0 and you can't close it out. You don't score that many more runs and you let Minnesota come back. So of course you're going to be pissed. Of course you're going to show a little bit of emotion. Your job is on the line and you're feeling the heat. So, I can understand that he reacted that way. But what was weird was the way in which the news came down on Tuesday that he got suspended. He's there at the ballpark. They're going through, putting out the lineups. All of a sudden, you hear the rumblings. Ausmus suspended for 1 game. So now it's not like he wasn't there already. So he's just chilling out in the suite and going about his business. It was weird.
Did you think that it was worthy of a game suspension? Because I absolutely didn't. I mean, you got guys like Jose Bautista basically being a punching bag out there and starting a riot on the field, getting a game suspension, while you've got Brad Ausmus, who basically chews out a referee or an umpire for making awful calls. He basically just kind of let him have it. I think what was really damning for Brad Ausmus was the microphone picked it up, and it was broadcasted over both networks. And I think that was probably the most damning. On top of that, ESPN then picks it up, and they run with it every 15 and 45 on the hour talking about it. So that was probably the most damning, but I didn't think it deserved a suspension. I mean, not when you've got guys inciting brawls on the field. It didn't seem to make sense. What I can say about Brad Ausmus losing his mind on Monday, it made me like him more. It made me respect him a little bit more. I don't really sympathize with him so much, but it made me like him. It showed more of a human quality because a lot of times Brad Ausmus, when you get his post-game reactions, you get his pre-game reactions. Yes, it's what a lot of it is.
PC police galore.
He's like a damn cyborg. You know, I mean, it's like type in the question you have, and out will come the most PC and most bland vanilla answer you will get. And that showed to me that he's more than just this deck of cards that's only 10, 11, 12 cards deep. You know, maybe there is a stack of 52 there. You know, you just got to pull the right card, and you'll kind of see that more human side of him.
Well, that's what everyone's saying, is that maybe that's why the detractors that are saying it was fake will say that, you know, interesting timing that he did that. But did he deserve a suspension? Listen, you know, when you look at baseball, the officials you would consider to be like management. So the fact, you're right, that they got his words picked up and on Fox Sports Detroit, Minnesota, I understand the fact that they did suspend him, because you can't let managers, you know, basically cuss out your umpires. Because if you did, then the umpires are going to get pissed, and they're going to start chirping too. So you had to do it. One game was fair. Might as well be versus Minnesota. Let Gene Lamont, you know.
Oh, good old Gino.
Good old Gino. Now, you asked a question, and when we talked a little bit, that was very fair. After that Baltimore series, do you feel like that blown call, you know, J.D. Martinez with the check swing, they don't call it a strike. He goes on to hit a home run. Miggy goes on to hit the next pitch out of the ballpark. They salvage one game. With that, you know, they did still lose 11 of 13, and they're scuffling. They're still in fourth place. They're still 5-6 games out of first. Do you think at this point in time that Ausmus deserves to have his job? I would think by now it would have been proper. It wouldn't have been a big deal had you let him go.
You know, after me and you were talking on Twitter during the Orioles game, during that series, and you had posed a question like, there's no way he survives this, right? And I was like, look, if he loses this series, and I had fully anticipated that they would lose the Baltimore series, there's no way that he comes back. The moment that plane touches down in Detroit, he's canned. Next thing you know, Monday rolls around, he's not fired yet. Tuesday rolls around, he's not fired yet. We got Wednesday's afternoon game going on, he's not fired yet. I was shocked and I was stunned. I thought for sure that come Monday, early morning, there would have been some news, there would have been some type of press release given out by the Tigers. I really believe that if Jim Leyland was more accepting of taking this position over and doing this, Brad Ausmus wouldn't stand a chance. He would have already been fired. It sounds like Jim Leyland wants nothing to do with this team right now. He's happy where he's at. He's good riding off into the sunset. He's going to do his thing with USA baseball, and that's basically going to be it for him. He doesn't want to come back, and he doesn't want to do the grind, doesn't want to take over the Tigers. That being said, I think Al Avila's kind of stuck because there's nobody that he really trusts any more than Brad Ausmus to do this. And if you listen to certain clips of Al Avila and the way he talks with the media, Brad Ausmus has a very short leash, but that's only because Al Avila doesn't have anybody else to go to right now, or he doesn't know who he wants to go to. He doesn't know who he wants to turn to. And we've talked about it a couple times. I mean, there are guys in this organization that they could promote to be the manager. You said, who did you say? You said the batting, or the...
Azagian. Or not Azagian, Omar Vizquel.
Yes, Omar Vizquel. Thank you. Easy for me to say, right? They also have Lloyd McClendon. He doesn't seem like he wants the Tigers' position. They've got Kurt Gibson, but he's dealing with his health issues, and it doesn't seem like he's healthy enough to come in and take this position. Jim Leyland says he doesn't want it. So who do you got? You basically have Brad Ausmus. I mean, you're not going to go out and get Ron Gardenhire because that's going to go counterintuitive to what you want to do with this organization going forward, because you want this organization to be more along the cybermetrics type of role. You know, I mean, you'd go with Jim Leyland because there's a comfort there. On top of that,
he's had success.
Yes, he's had success. He knows how this organization is run, and he would basically be handpicked by Mike Ilitch, who, the more and more I think about it, I really feel like Mike Ilitch just kind of hamstrings this organization because he interferes so much. You come out and you say, well, here's what we're going to do for the season and make that work money-wise. Well, then you don't get the players that you want, and then you come in and you're like, you know what? Here's an extra $42 million. Go sign me this guy. Okay, well, that guy, if I knew I had an extra $42 million, I could have put better pieces around this team to help make them better. Instead, I'm signing a pitcher like Mike Pelfrey, who finally got his first win almost 2 months into the season. You know, I feel like Mike Ilitch meddles way too much and tries to control this team a little too much. It's almost like Jerry Jones syndrome with the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones does a lot of good things and doesn't have a problem spending the money, but he always ends up screwing something up because he can't get out of his own way.
Now, Al Avila did say something that a lot of people were curious about because, fans like myself, you, everyone's looking at it like, who's making the decision? After the Baltimore series, it kind of changed my thinking in that the organization doesn't believe that Ausmus should be fired. They were willing potentially, if they had lost Sunday, to ride this out, maybe until the All-Star break, maybe until later, because my thinking is Al Avila can't just let go of Ausmus 40 games into the season. He would look really stupid, and he would kind of lose a little bit of respect in terms of his organizational choice. You stick with Ausmus and you fire him 40 games into the season. I think they wanted to give him a little bit longer of a leash. But he came out and he said, I'm making the call. Yes, if the owner comes down and says, hey, you fire him, he's going to make the call to fire him. But I'm wondering why, like you said, if Mike Ilitch is meddling so much, what is it that's keeping Brad Ausmus around? I mean, if you look at it in just a short vacuum, this season, yes, it would be very quick, a quick hook. But globally, and I've been looking since, like I said, I've been listening to the past podcast. I've been listening to all the things we talked about with Brad Ausmus. We said right away, this is going to be a disaster. I mean, we initially thought, okay, we know why Dombrowski pegged Ausmus as the guy because of the new trend of having a young, smart manager.
The whole sabermetrics thing.
It hasn't worked. He doesn't use that.
Well,
he doesn't use it right.
He does a lot of shifts, and he does different things like that, different statistical anomalies. He does that with. You're right. It hasn't.
But I'm looking at his overall tenure.
You've got a guy like Nick Castellanos who's sitting there hitting the laces off the baseball, and you're going to bench him.
Exactly.
You got guys who can't throw against lefties, and you're going to throw an all-righty lineup out there. What are you doing? Like, you're right. He doesn't use it when it needs to be used.
And so looking at his tenure globally, if you look at the last 2.5 seasons, this is not the guy that's going to take you to the World Series and get you victories. He's obviously outmatched and outclassed in National League matchups. He doesn't understand what to do in certain situations. He's not using pinch hitters correctly. He still makes managerial mistakes that are hurting his team. And then when you watch the ball club, you see some fundamental errors that you would not expect to see at this point in time in someone's tenure. If you miss the cutoff man, that's a basic baseball play. If you miss that over and over, what tends to happen is then you give up, more base runners. The base runners advance to another base, and the Tigers are not good at holding runners. So that means that you're giving up more runs because of simple baseball mistakes. At this point in time, that should be shored up. Some of the things, the finer points of the game that people look at, everyone's saying that Brad Ausmus isn't tidying this stuff up. So if you look at his whole tenure, not just this 40-game stretch, over the course of the last 2.5 years, you go, okay, is this the guy? No, he's not the guy that's getting me to the World Series. I'm doling out $200 million out of my pocket, out of my business. If that's the case, with that formula, the recipe, when you type that in, the printout should be big letters, F-I-R-E-D, fired. That should be the formula. I don't know what they're inputting into the computer that's coming out with Brad Ausmus should still be the guy. Whatever that is, that's not being input right. He's not the guy. Move on, start over, get a new message in there, and get to the goals that you have.
Let me maybe shed some light on it. Do you realize this team, talking about everything that you were just talking about, you realize this team as a whole, the pitching staff by itself, has a whip of 1.42? Mind you, a good whip is somewhere near the number 1.
1, right, yeah.
This team has almost a 1.5 whip.
Their pitchers can't go 5 innings.
That's an issue. And then you turn it over to your bullpen, which self-destructs. So now is this more of a Brad Ausmus issue, or is this an Al Avila issue? Or is this even a Mike Ilitch issue for not telling Al Avila, hey, you've got this much money, go build me a team? Instead, he says, hey, you know what? You got this much money, and then come back and see me in a couple weeks. I'm going to open up the checkbook again, because then we're going to go get another guy that will get the fans excited, who's not going to do a damn thing through the first 2 months of the season. Whose fault is this really? Is it really Brad Ausmus' fault? Yeah, I think he's responsible for part of it, but he's just playing with the pieces that he's given. Al Avila has put this team together, and early on, we were talking about how great this bullpen was. This bullpen has come back down to earth. We were talking about how good this pitching staff has to be for this team to generate wins. They've not been good. Not at all. I mean, besides Jordan Zimmerman, this pitching lineup has been atrocious. And you can point back to Justin Verlander's last 2 starts and say, hey, those were 2 very good starts. But if you look at it as a whole, that's 2 out of 8 starts now? 7 starts? I mean, it hasn't been great by any stretch of the imagination. And then a guy that we said is the key to all of this, Anibal Sanchez, he can't get through the 5th inning, So the pitching staff hasn't helped this team. And then now factor in the bats going cold. I mean, you got a guy like Miguel Cabrera who makes almost $30 million a season. At this point, he's going to hit lower than what he hit his rookie season.
Now you're hitting on a major debatable point that the media and fans are talking about in terms of what's the role of a manager. And all I got to do is point to one guy who's sitting there managing the Cubs in Chicago. His name is Joe Madden.
That guy's great, though.
Oh, that's a great manager. Okay, so now people are debating. You know, I've heard columnists and reporters and writers say that, hey, the manager day-to-day doesn't do a whole heck of a lot. I totally disagree with that point. I think day-to-day, a proper in-game manager has to make certain decisions, and he has to be a master psychologist and someone that can motivate these guys to play well and make in-game decisions that will help the team win. When the Tigers make base running errors, that costs you runs. When your outfield is missing the cutoff guy, that causes base runners to advance. Is that Brad Ausmus's fault? Yes, because he hasn't corrected it. He hasn't tied the shoelaces of the easy stuff. So when that happens, you go, okay, he's not doing the easy stuff. How are we going to have confidence that he's going to do the big stuff? Like maybe potentially bench a Miggy when he's not playing. Bench Upton. Make a move that, yes, everyone's like, oh, Upton's making $125 million plus. Let's just keep rolling him out there day after day after day after day because of his contract. No, Joe Madden would have sat his ass by now. Come on now. I don't think the gap between an average manager and a great manager is super large, but for Brad Ausmus, he's mired in what average managers do, and they make key mistakes. They don't get their ball players to reach their potential. I don't think Brad Ausmus on the Cubs has that record, and I think Joe Madden comes here, you're looking at a first-place team.
Do you think I'm out of line saying Joe Madden's a great manager?
No, he's a great manager.
And he's never won anything. You have to realize he's never won anything, though.
Right, but you remember, in Tampa Bay, you're in a competitive market. If you look at their salary range, they're in the lower half. Now you're at the Cubs. Now the pressure's going to be on to see, and he's gotten them in his first season. They had pretty much a successful year last year, and this year you could be looking at a World Series manager.
You're absolutely right. You're right. The way a manager handles things, his job is to help basically
steer the ship.
Yeah, the locker room.
He's steering the ship, but it's all crooked. He's like left, right. Steer it straight, dude.
When the pressure's on, you got to lighten that load for the players. When there's no pressure on the players, you got to sit there and you got to put some of that pressure on the guys so they can feel the heat a little bit. So it's all about basically running a gas pedal, keeping your foot either on the gas or letting up off the gas, and not killing your players and trying to sit there and making them feel some sort of urgency when there is none, and when there is too much urgency, making them feel like they don't have to sit there and rush things. But you're right. I don't think we'll disagree on saying that Brad Ausmus isn't really a good manager. I don't think either one of us, I don't know if anybody's going to argue us on that point. I mean, I think he's a very average manager at best. I think that giving a 16-year-old kid keys to a Ferrari is just stupid. And I really feel like Mike Ilitch gave a 16-year-old kid, Brad Ausmus, the keys to a Ferrari and said, here, don't wrap this around a pole. And you know what? He did really good his first season, was able to steer that ship and drive that car right into the playoffs. The next season, drove it right into a pole. This season, he basically took that car and has now set it on fire. And right now he's roasting s'mores on the fire from that car. So, I mean, that's kind of where you're at right now. I don't think either one of us and anybody else who's listening to this would disagree with us when we say he's a very, very average to maybe adequate manager. And he's not, if you're sitting there looking to build your team and you got to start with your manager, I don't think he's on anybody's top 5 list.
Nope.
He's just not.
No, exactly. Brad Ausmus is in a tough spot, but again, people are looking to the fact that it's a long season. You have the stretch of games that are all going to be played at Comerica Park. A lot of the games the Tigers have played have been on the road. So you look at a team now and their bats have picked up and they've won 3 games in a row. Do you give credit to Brad Ausmus for this? No. It's obviously due to the lack of competition that you're facing. Do you think that Brad Ausmus is going to survive this season? I don't see scenarios where what else can they do? They've lost 11 of 13. I don't see the Tigers losing, 15 games in a row. If you weren't willing to fire him after that stretch, what stretch are you willing to do it at the All-Star break? I just say they ride it out and they don't technically fire him. They just don't renew his contract.
That's probably what's going to happen. If they can get somebody else better or somebody else that Al Avila trusts more, that's probably what will happen. But you're absolutely right. You just made it through probably the worst stretch of games in the worst losing streak you might encounter all season long. So if you can make it through this and not lose your job, how do you turn around when you sit there and you drop 5 in a row, turn around and then get fired? You know what I'm saying? I just don't see it happening. And now you're going to be sitting there playing the next 2 weeks against sub 500 teams.
Well, Philadelphia's not bad, but they're like around 500.
They're not a very good team.
They're okay.
The
They're
Yankees
not bad.
aren't good.
Right.
Oakland A's aren't good. They're beating up on the Twins right now as we speak. I mean, they're not playing anybody who's worth a damn right now. So you're about to get real healthy. You know, the way it should work out, you're going to get healthy. And if that's the case, I don't know how you fire him, because basically he just took you from being, you know, one of the last in your division to possibly being second now if you get healthy enough here. I mean, the Los Angeles Angels aren't all that great either. I mean, all these teams have below 500 records. They're going to be taking on the White Sox June 3rd. If they can sit there and they can win a stretch of these games and then go into Chicago and they can take 2 of 3 from Chicago, because you got to remember, when you're playing a division rival, those games basically count as 2. I mean, we could be talking about the Detroit Tigers possibly being in first place.
You know, if you're looking to want to fire Brad Ausmus, then it just means you have to root for the Tigers to lose. If they get swept by Chicago, if they play these stretch of games and lose 5 straight, and by, you know, that series versus the White Sox, they're maybe 12 games out, maybe then you go, okay, that is it. If they actually have to bottom out. But then it goes to the point that now, looking at this formula and looking at what we're watching with this team, a lot of people, a lot of fans have said, this is it. I now have put my stamp on the fact that in my spirit, I believe that this team needs to be blown up. They've lost that. What the Tigers have done with this last stretch of games is really told a lot of people and ingrained in them, this team isn't a World Series caliber team. It's not a championship team. It's time to really evaluate this team and say, not worth it, blow it up, start over. Where do you sit on that?
I think you got some time.
I don't think so.
You have this season. I don't think you're going to blow it up right now. Nobody wants any of these contracts that you got. Who are you going to get rid of? You can get rid of a guy like JD Martinez. He's a guy you're building around.
If he keeps smashing the baseball, home run now.
You're going to get rid of him?
Yeah, because
he's a guy that you're going to build with. He's that next wave of talent that you have. You have to remember, your minor league system is garbage, man. Baseball America regularly states that the Detroit Tigers have a bottom 5 organization when it comes to minor league talent. They just don't do a good job, because what they do is they get players and they trade them all away for overpriced guys.
If you blow it up, then your thinking is along the lines for a revival for Tigers baseball in 2020. What you say is you trade JD for 3 guys, 2 prospects, maybe a major league player for next year. You trade a Nick C for 3-4 more guys, 2 prospects, one guy that can play for you. You trade him for pitchers, you trade him for bullpen help, and you actually go, you know what? Instead of winning games 7-2, hey, maybe if we get a rotation that can actually limit runs, if you push Verlander down to 4-5 and you get a guy that can be serviceable, then you can potentially look like the Baltimore Orioles. Look at that team. They don't got superstars on that team. Machado is a monster. He's a beast, blasting home runs left and right. But if you look at them collectively, there's no Miggy. There's no V-Mart. The Tigers are built in a way, when you look at it objectively, as a sexy team, as a team that's like overpriced and bought.
Dude, they're built to be a softball team.
They're bought.
They're made to hit home runs.
So now you trade your assets and and when you say blow it up, I mean like Miggy, V-Mart,
I just
JD,
don't see
Upton.
it happening. I don't see it happening.
Not all at once, but I'm saying you start the process. Last year, you got rid of Price. You got rid of Soria. This year, you might do 2. Offseason, do 2. Next year, do 2. And boom, 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 along the lines, you get a new team in 2 or 3 years. For you personally, not looking like I know the fact that they're probably not going to execute it. Do you want it done?
If it was on me, I would have sat there and started that process last year. I wouldn't have came back, and I wouldn't have given a guy like Justin Upton a buttload of money. I just wouldn't have done it. I think this team is saddled with really bad contracts. Mm-hmm. And we're talking going back when we first started this podcast, I wrote that blog about how the window was closing, and I sat there and I looked at the contracts that they had, and it was astronomical, the money that they were going to pay these guys basically going into 2020. You got a contract like Justin Verlander's, you can't move him. You sat there and you backs the brink truck up for Miguel Cabrera. You can't move him. You know, a guy like Anibal Sanchez who can't have a healthy shoulder, back-to-back seasons, much less back-to-back games, you're paying him $17 million a year. You can't move him. You know, now you got a guy like Jordan Zimmerman. Thank God he's paid off, because he's been one of the only moves that has paid off. You know, Cameron Maben's coming in and he's making some noise. That's nice to see. But honestly, you've got contracts that you can't move on this team. So I would have blew this up a while ago, because it seemed like the window was closing. And at this point, it looks like it's slamming shut at this point. But
so I'm asking you this. Forecast the future.
I just don't see it
by
happening.
The end of this season. If you know what you see with this Tiger team, Do you think they move in that direction? Or do you got to throw good money after bad and make a move and add pieces at the trade deadline?
The way this team is built, you've got to throw
a big disaster.
You've got to throw. I agree, but it's just the way this team is built. I mean, you mean to tell me if they're somewhere around 500 at the trade deadline, they're not going to go out and go make a splash and get some guys in here? They absolutely are. It's what Mike Ilitch has done time after time after time. I mean, the only time that he's broke away from that was last year. And what happened there? That basically cost Dave Dombrowski his job, you know? Let me put it to you like this, okay? Going into that series against the White Sox, they basically have got 13 games left, all right, in between now and then. If they win 9 out of 13, puts them right around 27, 28 wins. I think it might be enough to move them up over Kansas City and over Cleveland. So now we're sitting there, we're somewhere near like 27, 28, and 24. At that point, you're now probably in second place. You go into Chicago, and depending on what happens with the White Sox, maybe Chris Sale cools off a little bit because he's been red hot as of late. Maybe he cools off just a bit. You go in there and you take 2 of 3 games. Like I said, those count as 2. You know, I mean, at this point, you're only like 6 games behind. You know, you get on a little bit of a tear here, they can take over this division. I mean, I think this is a very competitive division, and I think going into the year, we all thought that Kansas City was going to be the cream of the crop. Shoot, at this point, they're a 500 baseball team. The White Sox have jumped out to an incredible start. I just don't see them maintaining it, and I don't believe in Cleveland. You know, I just don't think they're that good of a team, even though they have mashed Detroit every time they've played them. I mean, where are you at with this? Do you think that they can take over this division by the beginning of June? By the middle of June, I'll say. By the middle of June, do you think they can take over the AL Central?
No. At this point in time, as we're recording this, I'm on the sell bandwagon. I'm on the drop the bomb on this organization. It's done. We knew it 3 years ago. I just think that this team, I'm looking at big picture wise. Yeah, this team could turn it around. Yeah, they can be in the playoffs. When they get to the playoffs, they're going to get outclassed, outmanaged by whoever they show up against. And if they get
But that's that doesn't strike me as a talent issue. That strikes me as a manager issue.
Yeah,
I mean, your manager's probably on the way out after this year.
Yeah, when I say blow it up, I mean manager's gone, all the coaches are gone. You start letting go of some of these aging veterans, and you figure it out. I mean, you move Prince Fielder, you can move contracts. Are you going to get the proper value? It depends on when you move which guy. I'm saying, in my opinion, this is stamped not a World Series caliber. The window's shut. So with that, I'm starting over.
Let's do this, okay? James McCann. Are they moving James McCann?
No, you can keep him.
Okay.
Saltamacchia, I'd move him.
Cabrera. Are you going to move Cabrera?
If you can get something for him, if you can get a 3-4 starter, a bullpen pitcher, yes.
Is there a team out, a bullpen pitcher and maybe a starter?
Yeah.
That's what you're trading, the $30 million man, the guy who basically hits 30 home runs every single year and about 100 RBI.
It doesn't look like he's on that pace the next few years.
At this point, he looks like he's tracking for 24, but I expect him to get hot and there to be a correction.
And I expect
but you're trading him for a bullpen arm and maybe a starter. And Do you hear what you're saying?
And I expect him to run to second base and gimp to third.
Do you hear what you're saying, though?
Yeah, I don't think I think if he stays healthy, sure.
I don't see that happening. I don't see anybody paying $30 million for this guy.
Cubs?
Nick Castellanos.
Boston Red Sox?
Nick Castellanos. Trade him?
Yes.
Okay, he's got value. You could trade him. Jose Iglesias. I don't think anybody wants him.
You can roll it. You can keep him.
I don't think anybody wants him.
Right, you can keep him.
So you can keep him because nobody wants him. Ian Kinsler, who's had basically a career resurrection since he's put on the Old English D.
There's a guy you can let go of.
You could probably move him, maybe get some value for him. JD Martinez.
His contract is fair, so you could.
That's a guy you can move and get something for.
You could too.
All right, but again, Nick Castellanos and JD Martinez, those are your two pieces that you have to build around for the future. You know, that's not just right now. That's moving forward. Cameron Maybin, Anthony Gose, Tyler Collins, any of those guys in center field.
Nope.
You're not going to get anything for them.
Nope.
You know, you might get a sock that you used when you got done looking at Kendra Lust there. You know, it's going to be hard and crusted over and glued to itself. Good luck. Justin Upton. Nobody wants that guy.
No,
you don't want that guy.
No.
You can't get anything for that guy.
You're married.
Not even your used dirty sock. You can't get nothing for him. I would take your used dirty sock for that because you know what I could do with that? I could maybe scrape some of that crust off there, throw it in a test tube, maybe grow me a baby that could play freaking left field. You can't get nothing for him, dude.
Not right now. You got to wait till he at least hits 25 home runs and gets to 270. Not now. His stock now is low. Throughout the year, if he hits what his average on his card says, then maybe you could do it.
But you're not going to do anything like that with Miguel Cabrera? You're not expecting that from probably the greatest hitter that we've seen in recent history? Come on, man. The way you're arguing, you're arguing both sides of the fence here. You got to pick a side here.
No, okay.
You got to pick a side. Because Miguel Cabrera, if anybody's going to come out of this tailspin, I would expect him to do it before Justin Upton does it, right? But you want to trade Miguel Cabrera away for a bullpen arm and maybe a starter.
Well, I'm going.
What kind of value are you getting?
Okay, no. Here's the thing. I'm thinking that, don't overvalue Miguel Cabrera. I'm thinking now at this point in time, he's on the downside of his career. So another team's not going to offer a boatload. So I'm looking realistically. I'm not arguing both sides. Every single person on that roster is open for a trade. Now, what you're arguing is whether or not they could execute it. I'm saying if there is an offer that you would take, then I would look at it and take it. Now, I'm not privy to what you're arguing is what are these guys' value? That I don't know. What I'm saying is get rid of everybody. Just get rid of everybody.
What I'm
and
arguing is that
you
have overpriced talent on this team.
You do.
That has contracts that are unmovable. And the two guys that you do have on this team who have very fair contracts, they are hitting the tar out of the baseball right now. And those would be the only pieces you could possibly move.
Then I'll do that.
I'll even throw in Ian Kinsler's deal.
Sure.
Because that's somewhat of a fair deal the way he's been playing lately. And he looks like he's got a little bit of juice left in the tank. So you maybe have 3 guys that you could possibly move and get something for.
Sure.
Everybody else, nobody wants these contracts because Mike Ilitch was silly enough to go out there and back trucks up full of cash for these guys and said, hey, come play baseball for me. Win me a World Series so that way they can dust me out of the mothballs in my coffin, prop me up with some sticks and some puppeteers sitting there making me dance on the stage, and let me hold that trophy up. And then the moment I get that trophy, I'm just going to die right there.
So, based on proper value, I would get rid of who would bring you proper value as well.
So you're trading basically the 3
Yes.
good pieces we have.
I think that if you're looking at a long-term 5-year deal, you may have to look at some of the stuff.
Well, you heard it
questions.
here. John has basically destroyed your baseball team, and now you have no pieces moving forward because you have nothing in your minor league system because Dave Dombrowski didn't know how to build one of those. And basically the best hitter in the AL and basically the home run hitter in the AL with JD Martinez, they're both now gone off your team. So now you're stuck with overpriced talent and prospects. Good luck.
Well, Adam.
Good job going on 2016, 2017, and 2018 because now your team sucks for a long time.
No. See, Adam, I believe that last time I checked, the Major League Baseball draft was like 75 rounds long. So,
it is.
So
you're not getting anything.
I believe there's going to be a 2016 draft, a 2017 draft, a 2018 draft where I can replenish talent and start the process of doing that. So my 5-year plan will be executed perfectly.
So in round 59 of the 2018 draft,
I'm gonna find pieces.
Are you pulling a starter?
I'm pulling pieces.
I need to know that you're pulling a starter.
When I execute my plan, it will work.
All right. You know what? I'll be waiting to see that.
Listen, I wasn't discussing the feasibility.
Me and Mike Ilitch will be put on mothballs, and we'll be waiting to see that.
Yes, exactly.
I think what they're going to end up doing to him is they're just going to cryogenically freeze his ass, and when they win, they'll unthaw him.
Seriously, I think he might just be willing to do whatever he can to up the payroll to 275.
Jesus.
Yeah, I don't think they're looking at rebuilding in which we're
hot
arguing how.
and ready's for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Who wants a hot and ready? Y'all get one, and you're all paying $25 for a hot and ready.
If 200 ain't gonna do it, 275 might as well do it. Go for it,
boy.
All right, let's take a quick break. Good Tigers talk, good debate, sir. Let's come back. We'll play a round of the Doctors in Session, and then we're going to talk to Kristen Keith from Fox Sports Detroit to wrap up this podcast. Stay with us, Doc and Jock, Detroit Sports Podcast Network, episode 145.
Doc and Jock here for Fanatic U. If you're looking for some sweet sports swag and you love your Detroit teams, and I mean you really love your Detroit teams, you got to check out fanaticu.com and get the coolest gear out there and rock your Red Wings shirt, rock your Lions shirt, rock your Piston apparel. Wear it till the wheels fall off. Michigan State, you know what? They got it too. Check out Fanatic U. They have 6 locations all over Metro Detroit. Check them out, fanaticu.com.
Yeah, we coming now. Come on. Yeah, that's right. We put it down. It's like a family in here, just a little disabled. Putting it down, we lay them out on the table. Yeah. Who's in the house? The brothers in the house. Gotta turn it on out, let you know what we about. Kinda like Cain and Abel, a bit unstable. Don't be breaking the brain, break the whole damn table.
All right, rolling along on this fine podcast. Thank you to those who continue to support us, downloading our podcast across the various platforms, whether it be Podomatic, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbay, the DetroitSportsNation.com website. We greatly appreciate all the support. We wouldn't be able to do this, have sponsors, take phone calls, roll out almost daily podcast dedicated to Detroit sports without your support. All right, it's that time of the podcast. Jock has questions lined up, and I'm ready to deliver. The king of the couch is in the building. I'm comfortable, got my water, got my health food. My brain is working and firing on all cylinders, and I'm looking forward to what we call the doctor is in session.
But to be the man, you gotta beat the man. And I'm saying, woo, right here. I'm the man. Woo!
Big regret, bro. Only the second time in history the four horsemen were all together. Arn Anderson, Ric Flair, J.J. Dillon, Barry Windham were all at the Motor City Comic-Con. They haven't been all together that often, and they were all there taking pictures at the Motor City Comic-Con. I didn't go out there. I knew it was there, but I just didn't have time to go out there. I wanted to spend time with the kids. The lines were outrageous.
Take the kids.
Now, if
Maddie would love it.
they would have loved it.
She would have wooed for Ric Flair. She'd have gave like, woo!
And see, the problem is, it's not only the ticket. I didn't know what the price would have been. It wasn't just $40 to get into the place. Mm-hmm. It's $40 plus you got to pay whatever, $40-$50 to take a picture. So at that point, I'm like, you know what? I've seen enough pictures, and it wasn't.
But you could have met him. You could have shook the man's hand.
I could have took a picture with me and the four fingers up with the crew.
And his creepy old ass probably would have kissed Maddie on the cheek.
Man, what do you got for me, sir?
Hey, you know what? Before we start this, I want to say I'm proud of you. You know, a couple weeks ago, you went to the doctor, and the doctor kind of got in your ear about some things, and you know.
Oh, I know. We can put it out there. I flunked my physical. I flunked it royally. I mean, all the numbers that didn't look good, I got back. So, you get those back.
You've been working out. I seen for lunch today, you were eating some healthy greens there. I mean, your wife has put you on some lemon water.
Yeah, lemon water.
It's not
greens.
quite lemonade, but it's some lemon peels and some water.
Don't tell her I slipped some vodka in there, so it's all good.
Right.
No,
that's why you're so loose on this show today.
No, see, the doctor told you, hey, when you fail your physical and your numbers are bad, you just got to make some changes. So I'm willing to do it. It's not that hard because, boom, a week of working out, drop 5 pounds already.
See?
So I never had a problem losing weight. It's just the problem was actually getting off my lazy ass and doing something. So now I'll do it. Train or die is the philosophy. Just got to train. That's it.
Good deal, man. I'm proud of you.
That's it. Got to do it.
All right, moving on. So Joey Bats was caught with one of the heaviest and probably the cleanest right hooks I've seen since Mike Tyson in his prime, which led to a bench-clearing brawl. Adding a little bit of a Detroit spin on it, I want to know what your favorite brawl from the last 25 years of Detroit sports was.
There were so many great ones. From the Red Wings, Pistons, Lions, Tigers. There's been a lot of fisticuffs going on in town in the Motor City.
We're all a bunch of angry-ass people around here. Our sports teams need to be angry, too.
No, but I knew right away because I witnessed it live. I taped it because it was so outrageous. And what has become to be known as the Malice at the Palace. It was great. It was a game that took on a life of its own based on the antics of the players. You know, to set the scene, there were about 45 seconds left. Ben Wallace drives to the hole. Artest follows him hard. Ben Wallace was the instigator in the fact that he shoved Ron Artest right in the face with 2 hands, and then it gets bumping, man. Artest goes off to the side, lays on the scorer's bench, and boom, the Detroit fans at the Palace are like dumping, stuff all over him, beer, and Artest gets pissed, goes into the stands. You got his boy Steven Jackson, and they go to town in the stands fighting the fans of Detroit. And then the other scene that was lasting for me was Artest is in that like manic phase where he's all crazy coming out, and there's this Middle Eastern dude just kind of walking, and there's that like 2-second pause,
and he gets sniped. I was just about to say he gets sniped hard.
He gets clocked, and it was just a scene that when you've seen it, you're like, no. And the announcers at the time,
that guy's life was over right there. He died.
He said, they said this has the potential of getting real bad. And at first you thought it was going to calm down, but Artest, made the situation worse and threw the kerosene on the fire by just laying there acting all weird. And
the moment he went into the stands, it was over.
Oh, and Steven Jackson wasn't playing around.
No.
Steven Jackson went in there to throw a haymaker, and the fans, you got the fans holding Artest. So there was, you remember that one fan, that dude that went up to him and dumped the
beer.
Yeah, I looked at the YouTube video, and that's something that in Detroit sports history will live forever. Look at the name, Malice at the Palace, and it was a brawl for the ages, and one that when you talk about NBA circles brings back memories of the Bad Boys. But it was just a great memory. It's 1A. Next would be obviously Darren McCarty and what he did to the Turtle. But for me personally, the Malice at the Palace was awesome.
What year did that take place? 2004. Yeah.
It was 2004.
Because I was going to say that moment That moment right there.
Oh, rally cry.
That I think really helped define that Pistons team, and I think it murdered that Pacers team, because if you remember, it was always Detroit and Indiana battling it out for who was best in the East, and I think after that, that basically killed the Indiana Pacers. It just submerged their team for a long period of time. All right, moving on. What are your thoughts on Bill Barnwell's C+ grade, which was the lowest in the NFC North for the Lions' offseason moves? He stated in his article that the Lions overpaid and reached for Calvin Johnson's replacement in Marvin Jones. They lost Issa Abdul-Qaddus, who made their defense better last season. He continued to say adding new additions and size to the lines was a positive, and bringing Haloti Ngata back at a reasonable price was a big win. The team, however, has a lot of work to do, and they have to re-sign a lot of their young talent like Ziggy Ansah.
Yeah, Jerry Mallory did a podcast dedicated to not this very topic, but the national media's quote-unquote disrespect of the Detroit Lions. You can listen to his great podcast every Monday on our Detroit Sports Podcast platform. But I go back and forth in thinking about this, but I think the grade is too low, but I wouldn't give it that much more of a grade. I give it a B. The offseason is a B. It's not average. It's above average. You improved the team. I believe that, Calvin Johnson was a guy that was, his skills had diminished. You don't have Calvin Johnson in one player. You're looking to spread out his production across the guys that you got. And when you look at bringing free agents, it's tough talking about Detroit saying, getting the proper value with their contracts, because it takes a little bit of overspending to get guys to come here to Detroit. But do I believe Marvin Jones can be productive here? Of course. In this offense, I do believe that Curley, Marvin Jones, and maybe the emergence of Ebron, if he can, keep the ball in his hands for once, then you have an offense that can be successful. And what the Lions are building and what they're trying to achieve, and I think they're getting close to it, is to have a steady system of an offensive unit and a defensive unit where it doesn't really matter what guys you bring in. If they fit into the system, then it can be successful. Continuity, you do have to, you can't poo-poo it. They kept their defensive coordinator, they kept their offensive coordinator, and so I believe the moves that were made were intended to help out Stafford, and the draft was, relatively speaking, a positive draft. You went safe, and you got guys here that you believe are going to help this team. No, it's not an A+ draft. You could have got better guys, but in terms of what you did get, I do believe sitting here today, the Lions are better than they were, so that's why I'm going to give them a grade of a B. And I do think the national media and the fans that do hate on their what they've done, I understand that's based upon your skepticism of a team that has shown you that the guys that they pick tend to suck. So it's a new regime, though. I'm going to reserve my judgment until the guys that Bob Quinn chooses suck.
Yeah, you know what? I think, what's his nuts here? Bill Barnwell, I think is a little bit off. I don't
little
know.
Cranky Barnwell.
I don't know if he actually realized what was going on. What I really liked about the Lions offseason is it wasn't sexy. They didn't go out and they didn't get a high-priced name or a big name. The biggest name that they got was Marvin Jones. And a lot of people are like, who? Marvin who? What? Who? So I like it. It wasn't sexy. They sat there and they went after depth guys. They added a lot of pieces to this team, and they didn't overpay for anybody, and they got reasonable contracts for all these guys that they went out and grabbed. I mean, they grabbed like 15 guys this offseason, and it was just to add depth to this team, to make guys compete for jobs. And most of these guys have either 1 to 3 year deals, which means you can turn them over no problem. So I liked it a lot. All right, moving on. With the NBA Combine going on, which I didn't realize was going on until the other day, I was sitting down on the couch and I was flipping through, and I ended up watching some of the NBA Combine because it was on ESPN, because I'm a weirdo like that. It's not quite the underwear Olympics, but, it's dudes jumping around in gym shorts, and I'm cool with that. So with the NBA Combine going on, and the Pistons looking to add some depth and talent with the 18th overall pick, what do you see as a better possibility for Stan Van Gundy to do? Does he trade the pick and a player for an impact player? Does he maybe select Denzel Valentine at 18? Or does he pick Karis LeVert at 49 in the second round?
Well, when you start looking at some of the mock drafts and things like that, you start talking to people, there's a realistic chance that Denzel Valentine will be available at 18. So, I could see a scenario where definitely, because the need is there for an impact guy, to trade. But the most likely scenario, to answer your question, is Denzel Valentine being drafted at 18.
Dude, if that's the case, I will be
winner.
I will be jumping out of my pants. I will come do this show naked with you. We'll put some plastic down on the chairs and everything. I'll do it naked. It'd be,
Oh, no!
Yes. Oh, yes, Dan. Dan Miller, yes, yes, yes. Because if you can get Denzel Valentine, And that's the one guy that I want.
Now people
That's
are
the one
saying
guy I want.
people are saying though the competition for the Pistons is a little bit tight because the Pistons have a lot of wings, and so
But he can play like 4 or 5 different positions
Right.
on this team. So he's like adding a value piece at every position on the floor.
exactly. And the reason why you want a guy like that, he's ready-made, ready to contribute now. That's what the Pistons need. They don't need to go younger. They need guys that are ready to come in and help this team go to the next level. And the talk has
And
been
he's not going to start, but he's a great bench guy.
he
Comes
fills
right off.
everything that you need coming off of the bench. A guy that last year averaged 19.7 rebounds, a guy that got to mature under the tutelage of Tom Izzo. And everyone's talking about it, that Draymond Green laid the foundation for success for these guys that come from Michigan State. This is a guy that worked hard, was drafted in the second round, and look what he's done. He's the cornerstone piece of a franchise that's they're in a battle with OKC right now as we record this, but Draymond Green is a significant cog in that piece. He's a glue guy. Denzel Valentine has talent, and he would come in here and he would probably be a strong member of that bench unit and could come in here and some would say could be a guy that could spell Reggie Jackson because he tired at the end of the season last year, and he could be a guy that could control the basketball. So it'd be a great fit. And he said he's got ties here. His brother Drew is a coach over there at Oakland. He's got ties with family in Lansing. So it'll be an all-around perfect fit. So with that said, knowing Detroit sports history, he'll be drafted 17th.
It goes right before.
No, so I think he'd be a great fit, and I do believe that if he's there, the Pistons, they met with him. Reports say that they met with him at that combine, and everything looks good. You know, as long as he comes out of every situation unscathed and uninjured, that draft situation will look good for the Pistons if he's there.
That's the guy who I want them to get. You know, I mean, if you got to trade up a little bit, trade up a little bit. Just because he's a value at basically every position on the floor. I mean, if you want to go a little bit smaller, he can play center. You need a stretch 4, he's there. You know, you need a guy who can carry the ball up, he's a point guard. You need a 2 guard, a guy that can shoot, and he can basically hit every shot on the floor. He's your 2 guard. You need a 3, he's your 3. On top of it, he plays defense. I mean, it's so hard to get these guys to come out of college that know how to play defense, and he knows how to play defense. Honestly, he would be a value pick if they can get him at 18 just because he fills 5 different positions, and he doesn't need to be a starter. He'll come off the bench, and he'll be an impact player off the bench, basically contributing at every position 1 through 5.
One last basketball thought before we get to our last commercial break before we speak
I
to
didn't
Kristen
think
Keith.
I didn't think you were going to pick that. Honestly, I thought you'd probably go Karis LeVert at 49, or I thought you'd go trade trade the pick and trade a player and add an impact player. I didn't think you'd go with that, so I was really surprised. That's why I got so excited.
Yes, sir. The 76ers won the NBA lottery. Whether it was
With Dominique
leaked,
Mutombo.
whatever, if he was prognosticating, if he actually knew the information, whatever, that theory probably will never die that the NBA lottery's rigged. But if it was rigged, I would rig it for the Lakers, not for the 76ers. But they're going to have the first pick for 3 consecutive years. Do you see this panning
And they're
out
going
for
to
them?
draft another center.
Do you think it's going to pan out? Because this is ridiculous.
No.
They've tanked literally for the better part of 3 years to stock up on these picks, and they've gotten the number 1 pick each and every time. They're going to have that StubHub logo. It's going to be real cheap for them to get on that shirt, but I don't think it's going to pan out. I think they're going to pick more duds.
The way that they do it is they take the best player available, right? That's what they do. And generally, when you're in the NBA, you draft a center if there's a starting center there. Don't they have like 4 centers now? Like the last 3 players that they've taken have all been centers. You know, they're all big men. You don't have enough spots for big men. What would be smart is if you trade out of that pick, you know, give it to somebody else, move back, acquire more draft picks, and start to fill out your roster. You can only have so many centers on your team. You don't need to have 15 of them when you only got, 17 spots on your team?
Well, their general manager stepped down. They got a new guy in there. So, you know, they're going to try to look to make some moves here.
Dude, the 76ers have been a disaster since Allen Iverson left.
And they keep getting rewarded. Why?
It just doesn't
The odds
make
of that
sense.
happening are unbelievable.
Doesn't make sense.
3
man.
straight years winning the lottery and still winning 10 to 15 games a year. What a disgrace, huh?
You know, they said that they told the fans, they said, hey, be patient with us. We know what we're doing. Okay. You know, at some point, it's got to start to pay dividends because at this point, you guys look like idiots. And on top of that, now you're moving billboards because you got StubHub all over your clothing. What are you doing? I don't get it, man. Great Docs in session, though.
Yes, sir. Let's take a time out, come back. We'll finish the podcast with an interview with Fox Sports Detroit's newest host / reporter, Kristen Keith. Stay with us.
I want to tell everyone out there about DetroitSportsNation.com. They're a great website, and they've been very supportive to all the shows on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. They host all the podcasts. They have great writers that cover all the Detroit teams, all the college teams. Check out their website and support those who support us. DetroitSportsNation.com. The collaboration has been excellent, and it's helped us to continue to grow and have great guests take phone calls. So our collaboration with the Detroit Sports Nation has really been successful, and support those who support us. DetroitSportsNation.com.
Welcome back, everybody, on the Doc and Jock podcast. On the line, as advertised, she is the newest Fox Sports Detroit host, reporter. We've seen her now the first couple games for the Tigers after their stint with Baltimore. Kristen Keith on the line. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Kristen, are you the good luck charm for these Detroit Tigers? Ever since you showed up, they started winning games here. What's going on?
People keep tweeting me that, and no, I'm not the good luck charm. So thank you for the recognition, but definitely not me. I think they just really are starting to click, and I think they were just tired of losing, and the chemistry's finally coming together, in that clubhouse. And you talk about Maven especially. After talking to him just 2 nights in a row, I think he's kind of a little bit of that emotional spark that they needed. He's really kind of helped light a fire and added some chemistry to that ball club.
Now you come to us from Dallas. Tell us a little bit about your journey from college into here at Fox Sports Detroit.
Sure. I graduated from the University of Arkansas. I was a track and field athlete, a swimming and diving athlete there. So, I just always loved sports altogether. I worked for the ABC affiliate after college for a year in Arkansas, covering the Razorbacks for about a year. And then I moved to Dallas to be closer to my family. And I worked in marketing actually for about 2 years, and then just did TV work freelance for Fox Sports Southwest, covering, high school football or shows like magazine type shows here or there. Covered the Dallas Mavericks for a year with Time Warner Sports there, and just kind of bounced around for a little while. And then for the last probably 2.5, 3 years, I covered the Big 12 predominantly. So college sports is really kind of my niche right now. Covered them for a while for Campus Insiders as well as the Big 12 network. And then got this opportunity and said, this is a wonderful sports market. You guys love your sports here. It's definitely different in the Midwest than it is in the South. And I love that. I love that kind of passion and the kind of fans that you guys have here. I said, it's a great market. It's a great opportunity. So I just made the jump.
Exactly. Now you're with Fox Sports Detroit. Tell us what your role is going to be with Fox Sports Detroit.
As for now, Major League Baseball, I love baseball, and that was an easy transition for me. Haven't covered a ton of Major League Baseball, but covered a good amount of college baseball, covered the College World Series for the last 3 years. So baseball is definitely in my blood. I love it. So right now I'm just going to work as a host. Sometimes I'll do the pregame show or the postgame show before and after the Tigers games. And then other times, it's their home, I'll act as a reporter doing pregame, postgame interviews, and as well as you'll see me during the game. So that's my role right now. As we move forward, I'll probably cover the Pistons as well as the Red Wings, doing similar things.
Now, Kristen, is Kristen Keith your real name or is that your TV name? Me and John were just going back and forth here because my real name's Adam Strozinski, and that would be a disaster on television.
That's too tough. That's just too tough.
That
is my real name.
That's
awesome. I actually have 2 first names, so half the time people will email me and they'll just be like, hey, Keith. And I'm like, all right, whatever. What's your name? Hey, Smith.
Right.
And I always write back. Whatever they do, I write it back. So most people always get confused. But, yep, 2 first names. That's me.
That's awesome. That works out really well for TV. Works out even better for radio. There's a guy in the area who works at Channel 7. He actually worked at Fox Sports Detroit. He was a production guy there. His name's Justin Rose. Another guy whose real name is that name. So that's cool. That works out really great for you guys.
Yeah, I feel like I fit in pretty well with the Fox Sports Detroit people. Everybody there has some great on-air names. I mean, you get Justin White, Johnny Kane. Johnny Kane's probably my favorite on-air name. I was like, is that real? Like, that's really his name? So John Keating, like we'll call him Keats, and everybody there, pretty good names you to work with. Nothing too
a lot of great names.
Mickey York.
Right.
Yeah. They're all good TV names.
Along your journey here, you basically, like you said, you went to school at Arkansas. Yeah, you ended up going to Dallas, and you did a whole lot with the Big 12 network and different things along those lines. What was your favorite story that you've covered along your journey as you're now making your way into Detroit?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'll just start with the most recent last year, and because everybody knows the story. Buddy Hield I've watched him grow up and mature not only as a player on the basketball court, but as a person. If you're not familiar, Oklahoma basketball player, a phenomenal story, kid from the Bahamas, grew up with 9 brothers and sisters, lived in a real small home. His mother was really the heart and soul of that family, kept them out of trouble. They all slept, in a 1 to 2 bedroom house there. And he's a phenomenal person, always happy, nothing gets him down, whether they lose, anything like that. He's always happy. And one of the hardest working people I've ever met. He literally is a different person on the basketball court than he was when he started at Oklahoma. And you can see it. His shot's different. He wake up and go to the gym and be there for 2 hours, and he'd go to class, come back to the gym, go eat lunch, go back to the gym for actual set practice, go to the training room, get some treatment, go home, do his homework, to eat, and then he might go shoot hoops again, just, always getting those repetitions in. And really just his story to battle some adversity and the positive impact that he had on the court for his teammates, not just for himself, was one thing I really love that story. I mean, most people are probably familiar with it now, but he was a really exciting person to cover on and off the court this year.
All right, Kristen, now you've been dropped into a situation covering the Tigers, and you've seen right away that Brad Ausmus' seat is on fire. Everyone's talking about his position with the team, and then you observe Monday's game where he just comes out there and puts on a display. He stands up for his guys and has one of the all-time great tirades. Where do you rank that tirade, and what do you think about Brad Ausmus' position with the team?
Oh, man, that was great. So that was my first game to actually work with the team. And I was just sitting there in the press box like, oh, my God, what is going on? Like, this is my first game. Like, I was just so overwhelmed, but, pleasantly surprised to see that fire in him because Brad Ausmus is a smart guy. I mean, he really is. He knows what he's doing. But a lot of people, question that. And it's just, God, you always point the fingers to the manager when you think, what's going wrong? What's wrong with his team? But it comes down to the guys that are playing, It's like, how much can the manager really do at that level? You got to get a team together. And I think that moment you saw that he was there putting himself on the line for his players, and his players appreciated it. It really lit a little fire under them. And you saw that, hey, they're all going to bat for each other. So, I mean, for me, Brad Ausmus is not on the hot seat for me. Now he is for the Tigers, for a lot of fans because these people love their baseball. I get it. It's different. Before I got this job, when I was being interviewed, they said, now, Kristen, this isn't like the South. The Rangers lose 6 games straight, and, fans down there say, man, I sure hope we win the 7th. And up here, the Tigers lose 6 games straight. They're calling for someone's head. Like, who are we going to fire? And so I get that. It's definitely different here. But it's early. It's, all those baseball cliches, I feel like I'm watching Bull Durham. And I'm Crash Davis, but it's boring. But those cliches are there for a reason in baseball. Like, it's a long season. You gotta just be patient. They're going to come around, and, you see them starting to click. They just got to put it all together. Brad Ausmus, for me, is a good manager. He knows what he's doing. He's a really smart guy. He just needs to get in there with the guys, and they just, some things just need to start clicking.
Do you see that kind of being the flashpoint moment for these Detroit Tigers? Because pretty much leading up to that moment, and ever since that moment, this team's kind of been red hot.
That's a really good question. I don't know if that's a flash, point moment. I think that, and you asked me about his tirade, where it ranks. It was great. I wouldn't rank it in the top 10 or anything like that, but it was exciting because you weren't expecting that from Brad Ausmus. He'd been kind of that calm, cool, collective, no emotion, sitting in the dugout type of manager, and you see him go out there, so that was unexpected. But I don't know if that's the moment. I think that you can attribute it to that because they just, they started winning after that. But I mean, if they lose, today, or they lose, the next game, what's the moment there? I don't think you can really pinpoint it to just one moment in the game. Look back on yesterday, and I'm like, well, what was the difference maker? Was the home run? Was it Nagy getting that triple and the guy running into the center fielder running into the lights? It's like, okay, well, thanks Michigan Lotto for that promo that might have jumbled his eyes when he dropped the ball. But I really can't pinpoint it to one exact moment.
Now, Kristen, you said you're a huge baseball fan, and you obviously love working in sports. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up and who were your teams, maybe in baseball, or some of the teams that you actively followed growing up.
Gosh, that's funny. I've never really been a big professional fan of any pro sport. I mean, growing up, I lived and lived in Fort Lauderdale, so we went to a good amount of Marlins games, and God, they were terrible when I was growing up, so it was more just, okay, this is just a fun outing for the family. I also lived in Houston, so I got to see the Astros a lot, which was really fun. Back when the Astrodome, they played there, which was pretty cool. I love doing that. And then, I guess the Rangers games since I've been older, but really, I'm really a bigger fan of college sports. I think my oldest brother went to Florida State, and I went to Arkansas. So really, I follow Florida State baseball pretty heavily in Arkansas, which I'd rather not talk about this season because they went to the College World Series last year, but they failed to even make it into the SEC tournament this year. So we're not gonna talk about that. So those are probably really my teams, but I just a fan of the game, a fan of the game and really any sport. Like my TV's always on, always on sports. Something is always on. I'm always watching whatever it is. Even if I don't like the teams, I'm watching it. Just a natural fan of sports in general.
Growing up as a child and watching sports, who was your favorite athlete? And being able to cover athletes, who's been your favorite athlete to cover thus far?
Probably Deion Sanders, I would say, growing up. I mean, you had to love primetime. At the time, there just wasn't the coverage that there is now of the athlete. So watching him, the swagger that you saw as a kid, like everyone wanted to be Deion. When you went out, my brothers would never let me play with them. So I was always watching them wanting to join in. But I would say Deion. I remember the first time I met him when we moved to Dallas, and I don't get that shock and awe moment. I was like, oh my God, it's Deion Sanders. And yeah, Deion was definitely one of the athletes I probably looked up to. Barry Bonds is another one that we were always watching, what's Barry doing, and Ken Griffey Jr. Those are probably three that really stick out in my mind. All my favorite athletes.
Kristen Keith, Fox Sports Detroit host, reporter. You've been in town for a few months or so. What have you taken in the city of Detroit, and what are you looking forward to maybe seeing around town here in our great city?
Man, I'm in a hotel right now, still looking for a place to live. But I ventured out here and there. I've driven around a bunch. Vincetta Garage, I think is the name of it.
Great place.
Great man, that place is great. So, yeah, John Keating introduced me to that place, and that's probably my favorite restaurant at the moment. But I'm a total foodie, so I am taking restaurant, tips and advice on where to go. That's really it. I just kind of ventured out. I've been meaning to go to the mall. I heard Somerset is the place to go, so that's on my to-do list for the rest of this week. And I need to find a good place and some good players to play stand volleyball. After college, I was a pole vaulter and a diver in college. And both of those sports, like once you're done with them, you don't really do either of those recreationally. So I'm not just going to go to a park and try and pole vault. So I picked up stand volleyball competitively. And for the last probably 2 years, I play competitive stand co-ed doubles. And I had a great partner in Dallas, and we travel around to tournaments and compete and stuff. And I am really missing that. So I'm trying to find some good players in the area and a good place to play stand volleyball. So if you guys have any recommendations, I am open to them.
You know what? I will direct message you. My wife is actually trying to put together a co-ed volleyball team. So
Nice.
Maybe if you're interested, I'll direct message you, get you some information. All right.
That'd be great.
Where can everybody follow you? Because you're actually a really interesting follow on Twitter. So where can people follow you, and where can they see you at?
Yeah, you can. If you want to follow me on Twitter, who knows what you're going to get. I'm pretty raw and uncut when it comes to my Twitter, and I pretty much say what I'm thinking. So you might not like it, but if you want to follow me, it's at TrackChris24, and that's just 1K. So TrackKris 24, and that's on Twitter. If you want to follow me, go for it. I'll usually tweet about sports, sometimes politics. I've been trying not to do that because right now I just consider that an ugly topic altogether. But we'll stick to sports for right now.
Do you have Instagram, Snapchat, anything like that? Any other social media platforms that people can follow you on?
I've got them both. I'm not active on it. All the college kids, every time I step into the locker room, they're like, man, you got to get on Snapchat. I'm like, I'm not. No, I don't think so. So I was like, I don't have Snapchat. You can't follow me there. So I finally downloaded it a few weeks ago when the Final Four was going on because I thought that was pretty cool and you could see inside the locker rooms and do stuff like that. So I have Snapchat now. I think it's KKeith247, but I haven't really used it. So I'll have to get better. Maybe if people request that I use it, I'll start using it when I'm at the games and stuff like that or in the studio.
welcome to Detroit. We hope this is not your last appearance on the Detroit Sports Podcast. We enjoyed our conversation, and we look forward to maybe chatting with you down the line when the Tigers potentially turn this around and we see some great success with our teams.
Absolutely. Hey, they're turning around right now, so let's just hope it keeps going.
Kristen, I don't care what you're saying. You're the good luck charm, so you just keep going down to Comerica, all right?
All right, we'll see. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Well, cuz, another new member of the Fox Sports Detroit family, and she was kind enough. We give her great credit for coming on here. It was great to get to know her, see her story. She's a big fan of sports, and college sports it is, and she's going to find a lot of things to do around here and cover. And, that's what I love is that people do come here knowing that this is a great sports town. I would argue it's probably the greatest sports town in America.
It's the absolute best sports town. There's no doubt about it. I don't care what people in Chicago say. Chicago set itself on fire. Cleveland, I don't care what you say. Your city's awful. Go set yourself on fire. This is you will not find more passionate sports fans than right here. Like she said, down south, hey, we lost the first 6 games. Hopefully win the 7th. Here in Detroit, you lose the first 6 games. We're ready to set Comerica on fire. Honestly, there are people outside picketing with pitchforks. It is ready to burn the entire city down. That's how we get down around here.
You want to know how this is a victorious day for the Doc?
How's that?
Kristen Keith, just follow me on Twitter, baby.
Oh,
Bam!
Boom!
A great podcast. I love the fact that the support around town that we get around here, and it's much appreciated. Thank you to Fox Sports Detroit for allowing that to happen, and, everyone around town has been great to us. As always, for the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon, new fan of co-ed volleyball, I guess.
My wife wanted something to do, bro, so we might be doing that.
I think I might have to be doing it too for some reason. Let's get the hell out of here before we get in trouble. All right, later, brother.
Hey, go Tigers.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.